We are live. So, hi everyone, welcome to the Enlightening Tangent podcast. I'm your host Gautam, aka the Seeker of Wisdom. I'm a manifestation coach, and in episode 2 today we have Inez. Hi Inez, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you, and I'm really, really happy we were able to do this. So, thank you for joining. And let's start with, tell us a bit about yourself and who you are, what you do, and then we can take it from there.
Absolutely. So, I'm Inez. I am a manifestation coach as well as my friend. We were going to talk about how we got into manifestation. I'm not sure if you want to start with how you got introduced to manifesting and how you got inspired to become a manifestation coach.
Right. Okay. I mean, like for me, it was pretty kind of straightforward. Like, I started out in 2018, with law of attraction and everything, like with this page. This was a hobby for me more so than anything. Like in the beginning, I always tell people, like, I didn't start with the intent of being a manifestation coach. When I started out in the December of 2018 and stuff like that, like I just wanted to just post quotes, and just interact with like-minded people, and just
Hmm.
have different perspectives, I guess you could say, and just kind of develop. And the opportunities just came by over the years for me to do this. And yeah, I think I started out being a coach in like 2020 towards the end of it, and then yeah, the rest is history, I guess.
Absolutely. I love that. Did you happen to watch The Secret?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's how I kind of began this whole thing. So I think it was the I don't know if it was the end of 2015 or the early 2016 is when like my mom
Hmm.
was like kind of watching it, and I was like, what are you listening to and things like that. And then it kind of went from there. So yeah, credits
Yeah.
to her. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. I actually got introduced to The Secret back like 2012. A friend
Okay.
actually a friend actually introduced me to The Secret. And at first I was really confused with like what he was showing me. So it was
Right.
one of those things where I was like, you know what, I need to repeat this like documentary over and over again. And then it finally clicked like I didn't
Mm,
really realize that there was so much more to this, like understanding that your thoughts were creating everything. And
right.
I had my ups and downs ever since watching that documentary. Like, I started to look up to Abraham Hicks. I started going onto YouTube trying to figure out, like, how exactly do you manifest, like,
Mm-hmm.
desires? And you know
Mm-hmm.
what? Honestly, the word manifestation wasn't even it wasn't big at the time, like the name brand.
What time
Um,
are we talking here? Like, what kind of time?
um,
Yeah, like was it like in
this
the
was,
early 2012 or like 2013,
yeah.
2014?
Oh yeah, this was like back in 2012. Like nobody was talking about the word manifestation. It was
Right.
mostly known as the secret or the law of attraction. Like even
Mm.
law of assumption wasn't even out yet. At
I,
least
I
not
I
that I
pretty
know.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that wasn't probably on the radar, because back then, like, yeah, like you say, like even the word manifesting wasn't even like kind of thrown around. It kind of has
Hmm.
a revitalization recently, but like yeah, it makes sense. But like how old were you like back then? Like
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I was 18 years old whenever
Right,
I was
right, right.
introduced to the secret. I'm 29 years old now, so you can only imagine like the
The growth.
journey,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
growth,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
journey, understanding, my own power, my own subconscious mind. And you know what? I didn't even know Neville Goddard at the time because his teachings were the ones that helped me the most. He was
Right, right.
he helped me spiritually awaken by his own teachings. And I didn't really get to know who he was until maybe what 6, 8 years down into like understanding quote unquote law of attraction at the time because I was
Oh,
always looking
definitely.
up to,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, because I was trying to understand other coaches,
Mm,
teachings, and
mm,
they
mm,
were
mm.
all right. Like it still wasn't helping me understand like how to manifest that, or using the law of attraction at the time. Like I was still very sloppy. Like I wasn't seeing results. I wasn't the best at it. But I
Right,
still wanted to
right.
keep searching for answers because I just wouldn't let go. I was kind of obsessed with the idea that you can create, almost anything that you wanted, especially when it
Hmm.
comes to like specific people. I think that's how I got mostly introduced into it, was because I was trying to manifest like this old
Yeah,
SP at the time. Um and yeah, like I think that's when I barely started to get into how Neville's teachings were about how everybody was you pushed out. Now that was such a deep learning. I still
right,
was so
right,
confused at
right.
the time with how it applies. Like, what do you mean about everyone is you pushed out? Like, what do you mean you can manifest a specific person? How do you get them to conform? It was just a whole nother level of manifesting.
Yeah, because that's one concept that a lot of people kind of still have difficulty kind of wrapping their mind around.
Hmm.
Because yeah, like taking accountability um for everything that happens around them. It's just not a concept that let folks can like wrap their minds around, I guess. And I can understand
Yeah.
why, for sure. But you're right. Like I think like with Neville, like they folks didn't know much about him, like in the
Hmm.
like 2012 and things like that. But he definitely seemed to have had a like a cult of like followers like around him like all the time. Like there
Hmm.
seems to have been a small group for sure. Because I definitely know, like, people who were really deep into this, they kind of still knew him. Like, I learned of the name Neville Goddard, like, from Aaron Doughty. I'm not sure if
Mm,
you,
I
yeah,
do know him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's where I kind of heard the name, but I didn't really look into it. Because he was really talking about the SATs aspect of it, like, imagining and things like that.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
just happened to one day just kind of bump into his videos when I was searching for something, and then and I really kind of resonated with, like, his like lectures. And I'm
Yeah.
really, like, if you guys know me, like, that, like, I really love like vintage songs and things like that. Like when it comes to like like I love everything vintage, to be honest. So I really kind of like the whole aesthetic of, like, his radio voice from like back in the day and
Hmm.
things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just like I really resonated with whatever he said too, and it just kind of clicked, like what you said. Like it really clicked for me in a way that maybe the law of attraction didn't click. I mean, there are some law, like, great teachers out there, like, in the law of attraction side of things, like Bob Proctor. He just passed away recently as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, the like definitely Bob Proctor is the one that kind of stands out to me. But like I think his name is, like, there's one more, like Joe Vittel or somebody like that, and John Ashraf. And these are people like I really like kind of resonated with in the beginning as well. And
Hmm.
that definitely some teachers, but like nobody kind of clicked as well as like Neville did.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think like one
Same
of the
here.
reasons, yeah, 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 and I think he really kind of simplified the whole subject matter so well that I didn't really feel like I needed to kind of like reference more teachers than him at that point, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, like that's how I kind of like began with that too. I mean, much later than you, I guess, but it's a very similar kind of journey, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Neville Goddard is like well known now in the whole manifestation community because like just his teachings alone it was just easy for me to understand like now what to do, especially when he talks about living in the and then he talks about how everyone is you pushed out works, how thought transmission works. Like, if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I would be right now in my own journey. Because his teachings were the teachings I also help with my clients. It's easy for them to understand like how to apply like their own manifestations and how to
Right.
embody like the wish fulfilled. So I really appreciate Neville so much and his teachings.
As do I.
It's
Yeah.
helped
Yeah.
so much. Like I kind of stopped um, looking up to other coaches because whenever he came into my life, it was
Hmm.
like, okay, like his teachings really resonate with me. It's a lot more understanding, like easy, to apply with what he's saying. And I love that you told me one time that his teachings were from like the Bible too. So it says a lot
Oh
there
yeah.
too.
Yeah. 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 So I think like yeah, so he uses the Bible as like the foundation for his teachings and everything. And the way he interprets that, definitely challenges the the establishment and things like that, I guess. But he definitely took his main teachings from the Bible, and a lot of his examples in his books are biblical. Basically, the way he interprets it, again, like, it's very different. He describes the whole events that are described in the Bible as more as a psychological drama, um you
Mm-hmm.
know like aspects of the mind personified as people, rather than those things actually happening. So
Yeah.
it's definitely interesting. Again, not everyone kind of resonates with the way he has explained it. But it's one of those things where, like, if it makes sense, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think, like, and he definitely did use the Bible, but, like, one thing that I've noticed is that didn't stop people from, like, other faiths from, like, exploring Neville, or even practicing manifestation, for that matter.
Right. Right.
um
And trying
yeah,
out like
yeah.
all of the techniques that are out there as well.
Oh yeah,
You
oh
know,
yeah,
when it
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many of them. Like, I'm pretty sure you already experienced like all the techniques that they apply, or they that are given to you. And there's nothing wrong with playing around with the techniques. If something resonates with you, then I say go for it, because there is a lot of people that don't like visualizing. Maybe they don't know how to do it, or they don't really like scripting. I've met a
Hmm.
client one time that said that they don't like affirming. But I mean, don't you think affirmations are already included with like the thoughts that you're having, like the inner
Yeah,
stories that you're
that's the
having?
thing. Yeah, yeah. Like, and the same thing goes with visualizing too. Like, when,
Hmm.
especially for these two techniques, like, for other techniques I can understand. But when it comes to, like, visualizing, when folks tell me they can't visualize, it's just one of those things. I feel like when they kind of just, when they are being put under pressure, it's just one of those things that they can't, kind of get themselves to do it. They can't perform, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you can visualize, like, if I say, I'm holding a big red apple, on a bright sunny beach, like, like, you're
Yeah.
gonna imagine that, like, there's no way you won't see it.
Really easily. Yeah,
Yeah,
super
yeah, yeah,
easily.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things. And the same thing with affirmations too, is like, affirmations is just a line of thought that you're thinking, and
Right.
there's no
Because if
way
you,
you
mhm,
yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
right. Oh, yeah. I was going to say, because when you keep repeating like an affirmation, your
Mhm.
subconscious mind will start to create a picture eventually.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Because I think,
Yeah.
like, that's the way we kind of, like, imagine things automatically. I
Right.
feel like when folks kind of, like, start putting labels on things and whatnot, like, they just can't get themselves to do it again, because there might be that whole pressure that they are putting, on themselves, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. But I would say, like, just be relaxed as much as possible, and you can visualize, like, it's just one of those things. Like, if you can't visualize, like, automatically, I feel like some folks can visualize, like, much easier compared to others. That I agree with. But, like,
Yeah.
this is one of those things where, like, if you practice it, it's like a muscle, it becomes stronger for sure.
Yeah. It
So
just really takes
yeah.
like the momentum, the practice to it, like you don't have to
Oh
be
yeah.
completely too perfect with it, just be able to have fun with it, with trying that very own technique. There's so many meditations on YouTube that you can look into, whether you're looking to becoming a millionaire, or maybe you want a commitment with a specific person. I think especially with a specific person, people don't know how to get that clear vision with them. And there's so many
Right.
realities of how you can persist in like living in the end, of how to visualize. Like, you can say that, oh, I'm going out on a date, but you're visualizing it, or you're going to the beach with your specific person. Like if you can just create a story, like the subconscious mind will start to create that very image in your mind.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, really quick. Like, I think your audio is kind of cutting off. Like, I'm not sure why. Like, yeah, it was kind of patchy for, like, a bit there. I'm not sure. Like, did you notice any difference, or on your end, or something?
No. Can you hear me good right now?
Yeah, it's definitely better right now. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay. It's kind of
yeah.
raining on my side, so I hope it's not because of the rain.
I think so. I think so, because, like, I did hear rainfall, but, like, I feel like the audio just got a little patchy, somewhere in between as you were talking. But I can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Sorry about that.
No, no, no. It's okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Mm, mm,
mean, none of us could have like anticipated that, but yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, I think when it comes to SPs, where like folks really can't like see it, but it's okay. Like, it's one of those things where like I will always tell people like you know use what you can and then like slowly kind of build up to it. But with techniques, one thing I always tell people is broadly speaking, there are like three categories, right? There's like the visual side of things, like your visualizations and
mhm.
and things like that. And there's like the auditory side, like affirming conversations and
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say inner
And then
conversations.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then there's like the kinesthetic, which is like acting things out, or like writing things down. And like broadly speaking, it's just like these three categories. And then you kind of have the own variations here and there. But what's your go-to technique? Like when you manifest, like what do you use,
Yeah.
often?
I feel like I already have like this routine when it comes to manifesting, but definitely like
Mm.
scripting when I'm in the mood for it.
Mm-hmm.
Affirmations is definitely one, and I'm pretty good at visualizing. So if I feel
Oh,
really
okay.
inspired, like okay, I'm in the mood to visualize like this very thing, I'll like stop what I'm doing and like
Right.
start visualizing because it just feels really good. You know how you feel that inspired intuition, like oh, I'm really like it's like that creative side of you, like that's ready to
Right.
like either script, affirm, or visualize. Like it just really comes natural. But those are the main things that I like to do. Sometimes I'll do inner conversations if I'm in the mood to like want to hear like someone within like speak to
Mm.
me and what I would say to them. I really don't do a lot of inner conversations, although you know how we are always talking to people within our minds. So like
Absolutely. Yeah.
be
Yeah.
very cautious and aware with that too. So a little bit of like inner conversations. I do like sleep meditation videos because before you go to sleep, your subconscious mind's going to hold the stories that you're telling it. So I like
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
make right. So I like to make sure like I want to be able to attain the very desire before I fall asleep, and I like to play like audio tapes in the background, depending on what I'm in the mood for. It could be like a relationship, or maybe just what if I want to level up with my self concept,
Hmm.
money. It just really depends on what you're in the mood for, and I just play it in the background, and then I fall asleep,
So
and
it's
then
not really
yeah,
fixed per se on your case, like as to what routines you may do. It kind of varies from your mood, I guess. Is that right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Basically, like what feels good to me. Yeah,
Right. Right.
absolutely.
Right.
Because I don't want to force myself to script and I'm not in the mood to script. You know what I mean? Because it just creates more resistance
Right.
towards my
Right.
desire, and
Right.
it
Right.
should be able to feel good. Like
Mm.
even with music, you can use music to visualize, or maybe you want to
Oh
affirm, like
yeah,
make, but
100%.
like
Yeah.
good music, right?
Yeah.
So those are like the ways, because I feel like I've tried all of the techniques. I feel like I've tried the 369, um, other techniques that I was like, okay, I don't really like those that much. The way that I do with scripting, affirming, and visualizing. So I would say those are the main ones that are the top three I like using the most.
Right, right, right. It's interesting that you said like, you kind of just, do whatever kind of technique
Mhm.
like comes up, like depending on your mood, but like where does consistency come in all of this for you? Like are you ever consistent with a specific technique, or are you not? Like how does that work for you?
I guess it just really depends, because if I don't
Mm.
have my journal with me and I'm elsewhere, then it's like, you know what, I have my subconscious mind there with me. So it's like
Right, right,
I'll
right.
just self talk myself through wherever I'm at and try to be consistent. I think it's hard for people to be consistent because even for me, even if
Hmm.
I'm a coach, like I still have those days where it's like, oh gosh, like the old contradicting
Mm.
thoughts are trying to get in the way of the thing that I'm trying to manifest. But it's like, okay, like, how do you deal with the contradicting thoughts, and how do you stay consistent, like, with persisting your desire? You know how they say to keep persisting?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Honestly, for me, yeah, like I like kind of just stick to, affirming,
Mhm.
maybe writing my affirmations down, and just kind of like visualizing. I really like visualizing and whatnot. To be
Yeah.
consistent, like honestly, it really boils down for me to like, okay, how badly do I want this right now? you know you take a look
Yeah.
around your 3D and you're like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. And you close your eyes and you see like, okay, this is where I want to be. Now how badly do I
Right.
want this, right? And
Yeah.
I think that itself can be a very good motivating factor, to kind of like have that, to ensure that you're always on your feet doing something. But again, it's really a question of like how badly do you want it. Like,
Yeah.
you can have it if you really want it, but like again, the question really is like how badly do you
How
want
bad
it.
do you
And
really want it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. um
Absolutely.
because
And
like it's
mhm.
crazy. Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no, hold that real quick. You know how they say, you know how it hurts so much? It's because you want it that bad. Because the desire can be really
Right,
painful if you have moments where you feel super separate from it.
right.
At
Yeah,
times because
yeah.
the 3D hasn't given it to you, or maybe you haven't seen the results come in yet, or the movement, and you're just like questioning, well, maybe I must be doing something wrong. Like I know that the law of assumption, law of attraction, whatever you want to call it, works. But then people start to get very discouraged because it's like, well, I feel like I've been so consistent, I've been affirming, I've been
Mm.
visualizing, and it seems like I'm not getting myself anywhere near this manifestation. So that's why I wanted to ask you, like, because if it hurts so much, like you said, and you want it so badly, how much are you going? I don't want to say fight for it, but
Right.
because some people will say, why don't you just let it go? Kind of let go of just so being attached to it, because it becomes a obsessive thing, like a SP for an example.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so like the way I personally see it is obviously you don't fight something, especially in the 3D, because again, what you resist kind of persists.
Mhm.
You don't have to live in denial. That's one thing, like I always tell people, is don't live in denial per se, like accept what's in front of you. Yes,
Mm.
this is the 3D, but like one thing I always tell is like, but this doesn't have to be your future just because this is
Yeah.
your present right now. And
Yeah.
yeah, and when I say how badly do you want this, it's like more like in a motivating way rather than an obsessive way. Because
Right.
like with SP especially, like it's easy to get very obsessed, and the underlying emotion there with obsession is fear and lack. you know you are
Yeah.
coming from a place of fear and lack, like I really want this because part of me is afraid of like not having it and things like that. That's kind of the root of it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you are in alignment, you're coming from a place of love, then you are very easy on it. The energy you feel is very easy. And I know it's easy, like it's easier said than done sometimes to kind of transition into that. But like what I would do is that, like firstly, if you are like struggling to manifest an SP or something, like work on yourself in the sense that, like, not self concept per se, but like like just assure yourself that, okay, one, you do deserve all that you want, and two, that you are worthy of like receiving all of those things. And like just relax yourself as much as possible first, like stabilize yourself before
Yeah.
even trying to attempt to like manifesting an SP and things like that. Because if you don't stabilize yourself, if you don't address some of the root causes, and everything like that, like you're not gonna go far, if that makes sense, especially in the
No,
beginning. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And I would say, like, you don't have to fight whatever's in the 3D. But again, like if you stick, the purpose of a routine is to kind of keep you in the end state of mind, and slowly but surely, like what a technique does is that it kind of slowly, like kind of brings your mind to kind of redirect it towards the favorable thoughts.
Yeah,
And without
right.
you realizing, like it's like you start to think favorably, with the help of your techniques. And the more you do it, the more consistent you are with your techniques. It's like you are thinking about your desires automatically, even without you realizing. It becomes second nature for you. And this is
Mhm.
why then, once it becomes second nature, it's in your mind, dominantly, and then it shows up in your reality even before you know it. And that's the way, like, and this is why I always, like, come at it from the perspective like, okay, I have to be consistent, because whatever's in my head, like fills my mind is what's gonna be out there in front of me. So like, because I understand the process of it, like I try to be as consistent. And again, it's one of those things where, like, okay, if I can create the reality that I want, what am I doing, like thinking unfavorably, for example? What am I doing thinking
Yeah.
anything but that, right?
Mhm.
And that's what I discussed in my latest post as well at the time of the recording. Like, like the latest post was like, don't dwell on anything but your desire. And the reason why I wrote that post was because, like, really, because I find that folks sometimes just like dwell in things that are not in alignment with your desire at all.
Mhm.
And like, one thing even for me is like, sometimes if I catch myself like thinking something like that, is like, what are you doing except like to think your desires, to think favorably about them, and like, if I were like, in the beginning stages again, like that's what I would do. Like, and devote myself to essentially and be very strict on is really focusing on only that which I want, and not focusing on anything else. Because that's
Yeah.
one thing that how Neville manifested. That's how his mentors taught him. That's how Neville's students manifested as well. Like, in one of my posts, I spoke about like Abdullah, like Neville's mentor, and like Louise Burley, like she wrote some books too. She was Neville's student. And these two people, like, one thing I've always noticed is that, like, they always only entertain what they wanted, and they didn't care about like what the 3D circumstance or anything like that. They didn't
Mhm.
care about it. Like, they always came at it from the perspective like, okay, what is it that you want? You tell me what you want, and you speak as though it's already a fact, and it has to
Yeah.
be, you know and that's the
Yeah.
way I always come at it from. That's the perspective I always approach it from these days. Is, what are you doing except like, speaking your desires into reality, basically.
Yeah.
you know because, like, if
Yeah.
you look at some folks, it's like, yes, I want my desires, but, and then comes all the limiting beliefs and all the limitations and things like that.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
you have to be kind of strict on yourself that way. But again, you don't have to fight it, but like, it's one of those things, like, I guess, like, where people struggle is kind of find the sweet spot of it, so to speak, right? How do I
Mhm.
go into this world acknowledging what's in front of me, yet I, in my mind, am saying otherwise? Like, how do I manage that? So what I do is, again, like, when it comes to 3D, I always see it as very temporary. This is where I'm in right now, but this is not where I'm going to be for the rest of my life. Like, so every step that
Yeah.
I'm taking is transitioning me into that new reality, so to speak. Provided
Yeah.
if my GPS is like in my mind is set to my desire, like every step that I'm taking is leading me there, like kind of navigating me there right now. Whether
Yeah.
or not I realize it. Yeah. So, like, I always say, like, do whatever you do, but with the end in mind. Like keep thinking of the end, but do whatever you have to do in the 3D. And whether
Yeah.
or not you realize it,
Absolutely.
you're gonna be there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like, don't get me wrong, like you can have your moments where you're gonna need to cry because sometimes it's a little frustrating, to keep
Oh yeah, yeah,
going.
yeah. You should cry, I would say, like, because it really, holding on to especially tears can take a physical toll on your body. It's good to
Yeah.
release it, from your system, because, like, they always say, like, one of the reasons why disease appears is because you are holding on to emotions that are not released, right? So anger,
Mhm.
sadness, like depression and things like that. And they even say, like, I'm sure you have heard of this, like, like neck pain or shoulder pain and things like that.
Mm.
It's always
Mhm.
related to like some sort of a stress or depression or something like that, right? So it's better not to keep it in your system. So crying, like, I agree with you 100%. Like,
Yeah,
just let
right.
it out.
Cause
Yeah.
yeah, because I mean we're all humans anyways. Like there's gonna be triggers, there's gonna be like reaction modes. So it's like
Mm,
don't you're not going to always be perfect when it comes to like what they call the mental diet phase.
mm,
Because
mm, mm,
there's going to be periods of times where it's going to feel like it's hard to push through, but you do make a decision from what you can decide from there. Like sure, you can cry, you can have your tears, you can have your moment, but then don't keep dwelling on the things that you don't want, just like what you said. and what you posted on your quote on your Instagram as well, because eventually you want to be able to get back on top and start dwelling your mind into the new
Right.
state and kind of convincing yourself the truth that this is going to be the new reality of things, and that you're only 1% getting closer to that new reality.
Mm.
It's more of like building like the assumption into fact within yourself. It's not really the 3D. Like, it's going to shift eventually, but once you master yourself down, as a creator, and understanding that you can create like your desires just by committing to you and the desire within, then you won't really care too much of what's happening with the circumstances or what's showing up in 3D, because you understand how it works now.
Oh yeah.
You see
Oh
what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Because yeah, like circumstances won't matter, like you say, because like if you know that your desires are already yours, and that every step that you're taking is leading you towards that, like whatever that's in front of you on the grand scheme of things like doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And that's something I always tell like my clients is like, think macro, right? Look at the big picture, like don't micromanage anything, you know
Yeah, absolutely.
and
Because,
yeah.
mhm, yeah,
No,
especially,
yeah, yeah, go ahead,
when it
yeah.
comes, especially with the whole specific person,
Mm-hmm,
thing
mm-hmm,
that people are trying to manifest, because they sometimes feel like maybe they don't deserve the specific person, or they feel like they're not theirs because the 3D's not giving it to them just yet, so they have to
mm-hmm.
keep like working on embodying like, oh, well, they are mine. Um, but I feel like they struggle in that area at the same time. Like, they feel like, well, in order for me to be happy, I need them to be in my life. I want to be able to feel chosen by this person and wanted, and that's
Right.
not usually how it goes, unfortunately. You have to be able to accept it within yourself first, kind of claim it, that to really understand that they are already yours now. I think it's hard for people to grasp that idea, because people will be like, how come I can manifest everything else? But when it comes to my specific person, it seems so out of reach. It seems so hard. There are so many circumstances in the way of me achieving them. Like, for them, it seems like it's just way too difficult. Like, what
Oh
do you
yeah,
think about
yeah.
people trying to manifest like their specific person? Because I know that's like a really big trend right now. Like, it's been like that for years.
It's been the
And
trend for like, yeah, I don't know, like since the dawn of time, I guess. Like
yeah, for real. Absolutely.
yeah,
It's just one of those things people want, though.
it's yeah, like it's funny because like I I've heard like I've spoken to people in like conversations where like if you give them the option of like maybe manifesting money or an SP, they would choose SP over money any day.
Wow. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, and that was very unexpected for me personally, because I would have like chosen money any day, like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like I've always been like passionate about wealth building, and that type of thing. That's always been my kind of like my jam, ever since I was a kid. I was always wanted to do some type of business of sorts and things like that, right?
Mhm.
But and one of my friend kind of explained it to me, but it kind of makes sense because like love is important as human beings, and even if you do have all the success, like what's the point if you don't have anyone to enjoy it with, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, what, okay, fine, like that makes sense, like because as human beings, we are all social creatures who kind of like thrive in companionship, and and I totally get it, as to why that's like a priority for people. But when I first started out, like when I was like in this space for a while, like it was one of those things I couldn't wrap my mind around for a while. But
Mhm.
definitely, like when folks tell me like with this whole love thing, like I can manifest everything else but this, it's because you are putting a level of pressure that you're not putting that you may not have put on other areas of your life, you know
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, yeah, that's something that I've definitely noticed, is that like when it comes to this, I don't know what is it. Maybe it's the fact that with some people it's like oh, it's another person. So their actions are somewhat, somewhat unpredictable, in the sense that they are a conscious being. So how is
Mhm.
that going to factor in? Their actions are always that unknown, because I can
Mhm.
manifest a car, but a car doesn't have a mind of its own. So I can rest easy knowing that, like, a car wouldn't do something that I wouldn't want it to, right?
Yeah.
But with a specific person, it's like this is a living being who's conscious of their thoughts. Like, how is this going to factor in? Like, they can have their own thoughts, and what if they don't want me? What if this? What if that?
Yeah.
And it's these types of things that kind of, like, I guess, adds a level of unpredictability. But then again, with law of assumption, it's always like, one, you're the only one with free will. You
Mhm.
determine what they think, everyone is here pushed out, and all those types of things. And again, like, the only reason why if you are struggling to manifest an SP, the only reason why it's a struggle is because you are defining it to be a struggle, and you're
Right.
taking cues from the 3D. What I would do in any case is that, to really, like, persist in the assumption that you know they're already together with you, and that they love you and things like that.
Yeah.
And if you keep persisting in that, yeah, they will come. Like, sure, it may be a little bit of a challenge compared to other areas that you have manifested in. Again, not every single area is going to be as easy as one specific area, because you have different self concepts for different areas of your life. And again, there's a lot of factors here, like, your upbringing is one thing, your childhood, uh, you know,
Mhm.
trauma or a lack thereof, for example. Like, again, yeah, like, how like, how you have been conditioned, if you have been watching a lot
Yeah.
of movies, um, like,
Yeah.
what love kind of means that way,
Right.
yeah, and those
Especially
types of
with
things. Yeah.
social media too, Like
Oh
it
yeah,
made
yeah,
people
yeah.
think that the dating world has become like really toxic and no one wants to be committed anymore. So it starts to make people fear that love isn't really there anymore, and they may start thinking that way with their specific person, especially if they already have history with them, you know. And if it's somebody
Right,
that you want to be with, you're gonna have to like kind of go back to whatever how many stories you have with this person, how they showed up, maybe the things that they did to you, what words they said to you, and
right,
kind of like revise your way through. And I love how you said to persist into the new assumption of this new version of them as well. Because that's how they start coming towards you, and that's how they start becoming a new version of themselves. I think most people have a hard time letting go of the old version of them because once you experience something with them in the 3D, it makes you believe that that's who they really are. You'd start defining them like, oh, maybe they're a player. Oh, they told me they don't want to commit to me. You start to kind of create more things to start like worrying about that maybe you won't be able to be with them because of so and so and so and so. Like your mind likes to think logic in that way. It starts to create so much more doubt. Like the things that you don't want to experience, and it's so natural, right? It becomes so natural to you, so it makes you think, what if everybody as you push out doesn't really work around this? Maybe I should just like kind of move on and find somebody else. But if you don't change the patterns you have with relationships and how you see man, how you see with yourself, and like you said, the past traumas, then you're only going to manifest the same repeated things with new faces. You know what I mean? Like it's like the pattern still stays negative and not
right,
improved.
right, 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 right. Yeah, yeah. I think with SP, like what you said, like the whole perception about the opposite gender, like, media has been, like, kind of influencing that. And I guess, like, people need to, like, take what resonates, and leave the rest when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
that specifically. um and like, I think, there's a whole, aspect to this, right? There are, like, specific, like, dating coaches, just for, to tackle, like, the whole aspects with, like, what to do with the opposite gender, so to speak, right? There are coaches for,
Mm-hmm.
like, men, and then there are coaches for women as well. So there's definitely, that too. that kind of plays into that belief and whatnot. So I don't really like and this is the thing, like people, like they do, they do their best in the sense that they try to see, like, okay, what things out there that can actually help me, like, have a happily ever after with the person that I love. At the end of the
Right.
day, I feel like, especially when someone gets into law of assumption, or any of those, like, dating coaching, like, spaces, or any of those things, like, I guess what people are really looking for is, like, okay, how do I use this to get my person? And
Mhm.
like, the thing is, there's more to this than that, but I guess, like, that's how people begin. And I always say, like, you know once you, like what you said earlier as well, it's like, once you master yourself, like, everything just kind of clicks for you. And having another person is not going to solve all of your problems either. At the end of the day, like, it's not a quick fix to all of your problems. I'm
Mhm.
saying that because, like, there's that flawed perception again, like, I guess courtesy of media, that somehow it solves all of your problems or something like that. No, at the end of the day, you're going to still have to deal with your issues. If anything,
Mhm.
like, being with a person is only going to highlight that even more and reiterate that even more, if that makes sense.
No, it makes completely sense.
Yeah.
Like you may get the person, but you may have other areas in your life that you should recreate. Maybe you don't have the best relationship with money. So it's like, okay, like now that you got your person, you can maintain that, now it's time to go create something else, which maybe you want to fix the relationship with money. Like there's always so much more that people want to create after they achieve something. But before they even get like their specific person, it seems like for them they have to do something. Like, because I've had people say like, oh no, like it's been like an hour and I haven't affirmed for my SP or for self concept. Like I need to like get on top of it and do it. It's almost like it's like a chore, and it shouldn't feel like a chore. It should feel more fun and effortlessly. And I like that you said that it's more about relaxing like your nervous system, because once it's like out of control, then you're spiraling, and then you're
Right.
gonna feel like you know you have to work even harder, to try to get this person to come in, and it does create an energetic block to that very thing you're trying to manifest. So it's almost like, well, kind of don't think about it right now, and just kind of like really relax and stabilize the nervous system, so that you can start kind of thinking clearly again, and then kind of understand what is it that I want now, because it
Right.
starts with
Right.
you,
Right.
right?
Yeah, no, it always starts with you. I agree with you there. Like everything, it always starts and ends with you. So if anyone is telling you otherwise, like, especially with SP, like, people always think, like, it's always like, oh, does that, again, it always comes down to they are another person, another living breathing being,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. But I always say, like, no, like, again, they are you pushed out. They are just you pushed out. And
Yeah,
like that's
they
how I've
keep
always come at it
following you.
from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they always, like, and this has been, like, I think, ever since I learned this, like, I see this every day, where, like, my thoughts do affect the folks around me, like how they interact with me. you
Mm-hmm.
know my
Yeah.
my thoughts affects that more than anything. Yeah. And I can see that, like, clearly.
Right. Absolutely. Like you see it all around you all the time, through your friends or your coworkers, through your like family. It's so natural. Like sometimes I forget. I'm like, whoa, they like literally read my mind without me telling them like to do something. Like our minds are so loud. Like they transmit into other people's minds, and then they think obviously it's their idea to perform in that specific way. So it's no different to like a specific person. Like especially, how people are trying to manifest like communication. Like
Right. Yeah.
it's almost like they become too obsessive over the idea of like, well, they want to get that text message. And I hate
Mm.
that there's some videos out there of some coaches like, I can manifest a text message within a minute. This is how I did it, blah blah blah. But if someone doesn't successfully like make that
Yeah,
happen for themselves. You see where I'm coming from? They start
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
thinking they don't know how to do it either. Like they suck, they are unsuccessful. And usually, me and Catherine actually talked about this not too long ago. How success stories can trigger people. You know what I mean?
Right, right, right. I always tell people like, listen, like, one, be happy for others, right? Like, in the sense that, like, you know, if they are you pushed out, like, if they can get the success, so can you, right?
Right.
And stop dwelling too much in, Reddit forums and Facebook groups. Like, I always tell that to people, because I never understood that, in the sense that like the point of all these things is supposed to inspire you, not make you feel like crap or make you feel jealous, if anything,
Yeah.
right? um
Yeah.
and I always say this because it's like one of those things, like, success stories, yeah, it's supposed to inspire you. And I feel like if you are coming at it from the victim mentality, or if you're really coming at it from, like, again, like, looking at it from with an obsessive lens or like mindset, the
Mhm.
takeaway is going to be, how come they get to do this and not me? What am I doing wrong? But again, if you
Mhm.
look at it from an inspiring lens, you can be like, if they can do it, so can I didn't know someone can manifest that quickly. Hey, that can happen for me as well. And that's
Yeah.
a possibility that you're being exposed to right now. And I feel like it's really something that, it's in the way you take it, you know um
Yeah.
yeah. But I understand, like, it can be detrimental for sure, but, like, again, I really feel like it really falls on how, you kind of take the
Right.
message,
The
if you will.
information. Mhm.
Because, like, here's the deal, right? Like, sure, success stories, like, kind of might be detrimental for the person, but I'm pretty sure that the person who posted it didn't have an intention to make someone feel that way,
Right.
if that makes sense, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
if someone is posting the content, like, I'm pretty sure that they're, like, if they're sharing the ways, it's probably to inspire, okay, hey guys, like, here's how I did it, and here's how you can do it too, right?
Absolutely.
And if the main takeaway for you is like, well, how come they get to do this and I don't, or, I must be bad, which is why I can't manifest it, then that's on you. At least
Yeah.
that
It's how
that
you
that
take it.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. But I do understand as to, like, what you and Catherine said, like, it can be that way. But my point is that, like, it doesn't have to be, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And with
Mhm.
messages and whatnot, honestly, if I were them in anyone's position, I wouldn't even, you know like, bother about text messages, unless if that's my main motive with someone. I wouldn't even bother with it. If I'm manifesting a relationship with someone, I would just focus on that, manifesting a
Right.
relationship,
Yeah.
rather than,
Just
like,
one thing.
yeah,
Like
see, that's the thing.
something
Yeah,
so small. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
The whole
yeah, because
package. Mhm.
precisely, because if I were to think, like, well, how would, like, Neville do it? He would just go straight into the relationship, right?
Right.
Well, he wouldn't be, like, thinking about, like, getting a message from the person and things like that. Because I really want to make that clear, because, well, some people are like, well, what if, like, I want both, like, I want to hear from my SP and also manifest a relationship. Well, you're gonna have to decide, you know like, you're
Yeah.
gonna have to decide, like, what is it that you want, like, because whatever you focus on becomes your inevitable end, for the time being, at least. And, like, if I want a relationship in the quickest, easiest way possible, I'm not going to sit around manifesting a text message and stuff like that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just going to go straight to the end, if that makes sense, because that's what I
Yeah.
want. um
Absolutely.
yeah, and like,
I
yeah,
totally agree.
absolutely, yeah, because, like, that's one thing that always has been made, like, very clear to me, is like, focus on what you want. Because, that's what you want to receive in your reality, not breadcrumbs and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I can't do the whole breadcrumbs either. Like it's better to just kind of focus on like the bigger picture of what you want to see in the relationship because there has been people who got, success with their specific person with no contact. Like you may not see what's happening, like, with the universe's plans for you, but the whole thing is that you should just keep embodying, like, knowing that that desire is already yours now, like, have fun with it. I mean, if you want to manifest a text message, like, and just kind of have fun with it, like, but like you said, you want to make a choice whether, like, do you just, like, do you want the text message, or do you actually want, like, the whole commitment? Like, kind
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
decide
Yeah.
which one, and go from there. And with the whole success stories, kind of see it as like the birth before land. You know what I mean? Like, you're coming across your own bridge of events. And because when you focus on something like a specific car, let's say, you know how you start to see like those specific cars in your
Oh
3D.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
So it's almost like the same thing as like birds before land, like it's coming to you. So see these messages of like success stories of communication or just someone getting a commitment means that it's going to be you too. So don't ever be discouraged just because, like, oh, that's not me. Like, what's the secret? You know how people try to find like the secret formula of like how they can manifest so much quicker? There's
Right.
not
Right.
always shortcut ways to these things.
Oh
It
yeah.
just
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
depends on
Yeah.
like where you stand with your power, and
No,
the
no, no. I
desire.
I agree with you. Yeah, yeah. Because like I guess that's how people start out, but you know, again, like my point is that yeah, like just focus on what you want to get what you want, because it's like yeah, we don't want to manifest like breadcrumbs or the middle and things like that. And
Right.
I agree with you when you said like this isn't a quick fix. Like we were talking about it in the previous episode as well with Wendell. Like this isn't a
Mhm.
quick fix. Like at the end of the day, this is still work. It's mental effort, which is better than manual labor and everything, but it's still effort in the beginning, especially. You know,
Yeah.
to direct your mind takes a bit of energy, and it definitely takes effort for you, and it definitely takes that discipline, to kind of shift your mind to think favorably as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I feel like one people underestimate the effort that goes into it, and two, they like I guess a lack of consistency, especially again in the beginning, is what
Mm.
kind of like leads people to kind of like go back and forth with this, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's usually like the most biggest problem of why people stay in the middle of things, why they can't it's almost like they're stuck in between like two realities of what they keep focusing on, like either like the 3D, or they keep going back within the internal world. So it's like, because I've made that mistake myself too, and I was like, no wonder I keep prolonging like this manifestation, because I haven't been so committed, I haven't been so consistent with with this focus of already achieving this thing. So it's like you have to keep kind of exercising your mind, because it's like a muscle. So I know it seems really freaking hard at first, but the more you keep kind of exercising your mind and, kind of direct its focus the way that you want it to, with the way the thought patterns work with you and the beliefs that you have, then it starts to become a little bit more easier, and it starts becoming like a habit, almost like second nature. So the moment you think about the desire afterwards, it starts to feel really good. You just know that it's yours. You don't even have to work so hard for it. It's easy to kind of just let go and just kind of like live life as you should be doing. But
Right.
I agree with what you're saying, because at first it seems like a lot of more work, and it is like that for everybody. Not everyone's going to be successful in the beginning. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of commitment on your part, to
Yeah, just in
continue
the
to keep
beginning, I guess
pushing
you
through.
could say. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I always think about it like a rocket going to the moon or something. Like in the beginning you might need a bit of boosters and things like that, but as you go and kind of break into the atmosphere, like you don't need that much of lift
Yeah.
anymore. You just kind of float by, and so
Mhm.
that's the way I see it. Yeah, so I don't want folks to think like, oh no, this is going to be hard. No, that's not the point. But the point is like, don't underestimate the effort and kind of be complacent, because complacency, I guess, is what kind of leads people to kind of like sway and not take this seriously, and get very mixed
Yeah.
results and things like that. So the reason why I guess like Inez and I are saying this is like, be serious enough to apply everything, with due diligence, but also like and know that as time goes by it's going to get easier. Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
that's my main
absolutely.
point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to be reminded, like, the law is always working. There's no off button to it. So try not to be the victim of your own problems, the own circumstances, because then you're just going to go back to the old way, and that's not where we want to go. We want to be able to kind of get our minds back into the creative side of things and to understand that, you can have anything that you want, in your own reality.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I think with this, like I always tell people, like, one, make it simple as possible for yourself. Like
Yeah.
and like how many, like, okay, let me ask you this then, like how many areas do you work on at any given time, like, roughly?
Like with money or like with everything in my life?
Yeah, 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 like how many like manifestations like do you actively pursue like at any given time?
That's a good question. It just really depends because where our focus is going, our energy flows. So
Right,
I mean,
right, right.
it whatever just comes into my mind. If it's like relationships, it's like, okay, like what am I doing with this thought, with this emotion, with this story, and then I try to I guess you could say, like, I try to make sure I'm on top of everything. I'm not always going to be perfect, I have my days too. But if it's like with money, I work around affirming around that, making sure my thoughts are aligned to match the way that I want, the journey to create my money situation or the status of it. And then with the relationships, like, it just really depends on where my thought wants to take me. And I try to make sure it doesn't go where it shouldn't go, because I don't want to create an experience where it's not favorable in my way. Um, but I like to try to keep it easy and simple, like you say, and just kind of stay in the present moment. I think kind of staying in the present moment is sometimes hard for people because they don't know how to accept their reality now, um, because they kind of go back into like the past or like the future.
Hmm.
So I try to get my mind just in a good spot, um, as the
So is it
moment
safe to
continues
say
on.
like you maybe work on like 2 to 3 areas then at any given time? Is it safe to
Yeah,
say that? Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I would say definitely right now, I like to do my self concept,
Mm.
money. Maybe it's actually four. And then there's little things like a car, for example, right? Something so super small, but I would
Right,
say self
right, right.
concept, my business, relationship, and I think money is another one. And then whatever else in between, it could be like my
Yeah, whatever
health.
the situation demands. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It could be like better relationships with my family. Like, everything starts to come together. You have a connection with everything. So it's like, be aware with the thoughts that you're having and the stories that you carry, because it does determine what you're doing it with it now, because it's creating like the next moment, the next 30 minutes, and just like so on. So those are like probably like the top priority ones in a way. The most
Mm.
important, what I consider as my manifestation. So yeah, that's
Right,
what.
right,
Mhm.
right. Okay, yeah, cool. Because I always think like, how, do folks kind of go about this,
Yeah.
do they like manifest everything at once, or do they kind of
Mm.
like like,
Focus on one.
yeah, focus
Yeah.
on one, what's better. Because
Yeah.
I always tell my clients like, maybe focus on like 2 to 3 things max. Because
Yeah.
that way, you are just more focused on like, at that particular areas for that time being, at least.
Yeah.
Especially when we are
Absolutely.
coaching, it's just more refined, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was just curious, like, what are your approaches? Yeah.
Yeah. I thought the same thing. I'm just like, how do other people have their routine of, like, when it comes to manifesting? Because I don't want to always focus on just one thing, because I don't want to become too obsessive over it. So it's fun to kind of expand other desires around, kind of get your mind off of one and go to the next. Like, okay, I already did my part on this desire, now on to the next. because like I said, I don't want to become too obsessive over one thing, because there's nothing wrong with manifesting a lot more things. It's almost like a vision board, right? But it's like I am my vision board. So it's like, okay, I want to watch for the fun of it. Okay, I want like
Mm.
a free meal for the fun of it. Like, I don't know, that's just to play around with manifesting, your own reality of things. But then when it comes to like the quote unquote bigger things like a relationship, and it's like, okay, like same thing, it applies, with manifesting free meals, but it's like a relationship. So it just really
Right.
depends, where I'm at in the present moment and where my thoughts are going. So I used to say the same thing, like, how do people, like, what are other people's routines of manifesting? It should just feel natural to you,
Mm,
but
mm,
just be
mm.
consciously aware, like, the, the stories and assumptions that you carry about everything, because those really matter too.
Right, right, right. Yeah, earlier we were talking about this, and I think like in like just what you said, it kind of popped up as well. It's like what you kind of focus on, just kind of like pops up just a bit more in your reality, right? Like if you're like you mentioned the car example earlier, like if you want a specific car, like you see that pop up
Mhm.
even more, right?
Mhm.
And like are you familiar with the reticular activating system, the RAS, in your mind and everything? Like, are you familiar with that concept?
I don't think so.
So
Oh,
it's
no.
basically like a bundle of like nerves in our brain stem, I think, like that kind of filters out any sort of like unnecessary info, so that only the important stuff kind of gets through. So what,
Okay.
in manifesting context, what this does is that like it kind of sifts through the data, and it only ensures that the relevant information gets passed through. And this is like based on the kind of boundaries that you set, or based on the conditions that you set. So if you say like, okay, I want XYZ, then your mind is going to filter those XYZs wherever it finds it, and it
Yeah.
kind of shows it up. So like this is kind of inbuilt in our mind, is what I'm trying to say. It's like if I say like, okay, look at something blue right now, your mind is immediately going to look at something blue, right? It's
Mhm.
going to take out everything, like the app icon that's blue, that little circle that's on your phone that could be blue, or like anything in front of you that's blue, a signboard or something like
Yeah.
that, right? It's going to
Mhm.
pick out everything. So like my point is that like it your mind, it already has it inbuilt for you to kind
Mm.
of like once you kind of focus your mind on something, like your mind has systems in place to kind of pick that out, you know
Yeah.
and constantly show you that. In other words, your mind actually makes it easy to make something your dominant thought,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it was just crazy, when you were just saying that, like that just came up to my mind. And this kind of also helps you kind of work efficiently as well. So we were talking about like 3D and ignoring it and things like that, right, earlier. And
Mhm.
like I just wanted to tell people, like again, it's not going to be as hard as you think, because again, there are systems in built, like in your mind already, to do these things for you. You just have to kind of nudge it and kind of just keep it consistent. And if you do so, like you can ignore 3D easily, just by focusing on what you want, because you're going to be experiencing more evidence of that,
Yeah.
right? You're going to be picking out more
Absolutely.
evidence of that. Yeah, yeah, that's why I just
Yeah.
wanted to ask you if you're
Mhm.
familiar with it. Yeah.
I'm not, but I'm so glad that you explained it really well. It makes a lot of sense actually, because it's something that we're living with. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's the same way, like you said, how we talked about like the specific car, and also like trying to ignore 3D. Um, Most people don't know how to do that, because it's almost like they see too much evidence of the opposition of what they are attending for. And I feel like I've heard so many of these stories where how people check other people's social medias, kind of looking into their stories, and then it's like they're not conforming.
Mm.
Like there's so many ways of people checking 3D, and it's like you shouldn't be really doing that. Like, because it's almost like you're not being creative. Like, wouldn't you want to keep things mysterious and have yourself use your own mind to create like a better outcome instead of like counting the 3D for validation, you know? I think it's hard for people to just sometimes ignore the 3D. It just takes a lot of discipline on your part. Um,
So, what
you,
would you advise your clients to do then in those kinds of cases? I'm pretty sure you have, like clients who
yeah.
kind of come to you with that kind of issues. Like, what do you tell them?
If they tell me what do I do about the 3D because it's like triggering for them, I tell them to just kind of like just stop looking for evidence, and to
Mm,
really kind of focus on themselves because if their nervous system is kind of, wacky, I will tell them to just kind of basically focus on themselves for the time being because you're only feeding too much of your energy into something that's not serving you and it's only going to push out more of the bad experiences that you don't want. So you
mm,
might as well start investing your energy into yourself again and start bringing back your power. Um, because why would you do that to yourself? Like, you know what I mean? I would tell them, like, you know what, like, just invest back into yourself, stop looking for your manifestation outside of you, and start really being committed and disciplined within yourself. This is what I've done too. I've made my mistake too, where I was like trying to find my manifestation or if this person's conforming, whatever, and I kind of told myself, what am I doing? Like, this is only going to bring more of the things I don't want to experience, right? And it starts to become very obsessive too. Like I noticed. So I was like,
mm, mm, mm.
I kind of told myself I'm never doing this again. I even had to affirm it a few times because I became so attached to the outcome. So I was like, no more. Like you start to say enough is enough because you're only hurting yourself even more
Right.
by the creation that like you
Mm,
kind of created anyways. So it's like you might as well just stop doing that to yourself. Like if you need to get rid of social media, that's what I did at one point with Instagram because it felt really triggering. And at the time I was checking all my SP and I was like, this is not what I should be doing right now. So I like deactivated it, and I took some time to really find myself again and just heal myself really before I start to create a new belief of what I wanted to experience in my life. So I always say to kind of take a step back and focus on yourself again because otherwise you're going to live in this victim mentality mode and it's going to feel like a lot
right.
more work
Right.
on your part to, turn the situation around. I mean, yeah, I've
Right.
been a victim myself. I'm sure everyone has in their life, but it's a learning experience, and you
Mm.
wake up from it. So that's what I
So
would recommend.
basically, like, to summarize, like, you would take a step back, but like, how would you go about it though? If let's say like someone comes to you and says like, well, I really, really can't, like, ignore the 3D, because for your case you had a breaking point, right? Like you told yourself like, like, okay, enough is enough, I'm going to do this. But like, what if someone hasn't reached that point yet? Do they kind of go through that, like, or like, how would you advise them to kind of stop, like,
Yeah,
um yeah, you get what I mean? Yeah.
yeah. I would say just accept for the current reality.
Mm,
Just kind of observe for what reality is, but not really take in the information and say this is it. Like
mm,
there's
mm,
no
mm,
other
mm.
way around this. Um, and just like you said before, like kind of accept the reality of things because you can turn the situation around. Um,
Right,
so
right, right.
that's probably the best way to tell a person if they really don't know how to ignore the 3D. I would just tell them, look, just stop fighting it. Um, Learn to accept it, and also forgiveness is a big one too. Like I think forgiveness with the reality of what's happening is the key to really like letting go of what happened and just kind of get back on top of like the I guess the mental diet is what you want to call it, and start to persist on the things that you do want. Like
Right, right, right.
because everybody is in their own journey. You may do coaching a million times, and if you still don't understand like how to ignore the 3D, then maybe you're not understanding the program of things.
Mm, mm,
If that
mm.
makes any sense.
It does, it does, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, they will have to learn it somehow their own way to stop doing
Oh yeah,
it,
yeah,
or
100%. Yeah. because I always tell people like, like coaching is like, I can lead you to the water, but at the end of the day you're gonna have to drink it, you know.
Yeah.
um yeah, like it's the same thing with coaching as well. Like I can tell you all the ways, like all the XYZs and the ABCs of it all, but like at the end of the day you're gonna have to apply it, you know.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and like even before like someone kind of joins or signs up or extends their coaching and stuff like that, I would ask them like, okay, do you think it's helping you? Are you able to apply? And things like that. Because the thing is, it's the same with any other coach. The reason why I ask those things is because, like, you need to be able to apply what are we establishing. Because if you're not able to
Hmm.
apply, then this whole thing is a waste of your time basically, right? Quite
Yeah.
frankly. And
No, I agree. Hmm.
yeah, so that's something I always tell people as well, like, and I think like for some it takes a while for them to apply. So
Yeah.
yeah, like I think, how was your journey like when it comes to this? Like how long did it take you to kind of apply all these things? Like, do you?
Man.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like it took years, like absolutely like years to understand
Right.
because
Right.
no one taught it better than Neville, like I told you. It
Mm.
was like almost like 8 years probably in. Um and I had to see what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and to understand that I couldn't run away from the thoughts that I was having in the end as well. So I'm a totally different person just on like the knowledge of what I've learned now than who I was before. Like it's hard to
Right.
imagine like
Right.
if I had to start all over, like how would things would come about. Um but I never gave up. Like I if this was something that we're doing anyways, then I might as well understand, learn, do the research, see some coaches, what how they teach, and if it resonates, with the message, I'll take it with me. You have to learn it with your own experiences, like with what works with you, what doesn't work with you. Um, you know what I mean? So it's like it
Mm.
took a lot of like mistakes, and just the
Right.
experiences of how things unfolded for me in my life. Um, I must say I've gotten a lot better. I'm not saying I'm like the master in the whole world. I mean, you may be like a pro at it, but there's just those days where it's like maybe they still have trouble with it, because the law is the law. Like it just doesn't stop. Like everybody wants to be able to understand how to create something, and attain it. And then, yeah, I mean, I think I learned a lot just through my own personal experiences and like the mistakes that I've made as well. Um, and then I just was able to correct it differently through like the techniques, being consistent on like what I wanted to, what my living in the end would look like, and just kind of move forward from there. Um,
Right.
yeah, because
But if
everybody
you're gonna do it
creates.
like, sorry, like if you're gonna do it like all over again, what would you do differently in your process? Like, what would be different?
Hmm. Dang. Honestly, that's a really good question. If I could go back, what would I have done differently? I think honestly, I wish I knew self-concept was so much more important at the time because I
Right.
felt like I
Right.
skipped all of that and was trying to get like a specific person. Like I made other things way too important than really myself. Like self
Mm.
concept wasn't really as big as it is now, as well as like with the specific person, but I didn't know too much about self concept at the time.
Okay, so let's talk about that specific thing that you mentioned, self concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there seems to be a bit of like contention, I guess you could say, in the community, or like, there's a bit of confusion over that, in the sense that how important do you think self concept really is? Like, because here's the
Yeah,
deal,
cause yeah.
when Neville manifested it, right, like he didn't really talk about self concept, or it's
Mm-hmm.
something that, I guess, like, that was invented by, like current coaches, I guess you could say, right? it's not a
Mm-hmm.
term that was really thrown around in like a lot. I mean, Neville did talk about the concept of self, like how you see yourself and things like that, like here and there, but like it wasn't like pivotal to the whole manifesting aspect, like so my question to you would be, I guess, like how important do you think self concept is then, like like do you think you can manifest something without self concept? You get what I mean? Like, what do you think?
I think I think self concept is really important. I heard other coaches say it doesn't need to be important. I guess everybody just has a different perspective way of it, but if it all starts with you, then it is about self concept, isn't it? Like, because
Right,
you are the
right.
one that's reflecting everything on the outside anyway.
Mm,
So it's like,
mm,
how important is self concept again? I think it's super important because
mm.
if you're the only one that's creating your own like free will, because no one else has free will unless you think they have free will, but we're just going to say obviously no one has free will, like none of it does. Then
Right.
it's like, okay, like how do you see yourself then? Like what do you believe you think you are? Because that
Mm.
really matters on like the outside as well. So I always thought, I never thought how important it was, like maybe a couple years ago the way it is now.
You just like kind of just like in your mind just kind of fixed it, like okay, it is important and I'm going to work on it, like
Yeah.
there's no other way of looking at it type of way. Okay.
Yeah, right. Because I've experienced moments where I was feeling so much love within myself. Like I didn't need no one to tell me I was loved. Like I knew I was loved. Like I felt really feminine. I felt really magnetic. And I started to notice like how men treated me afterwards. Like they were really just so drawn to me. They were like wanting my energy. And it was almost like I didn't have to lift a finger. Like they just were coming towards me. You know how they say you become like a magnet to things?
Right, right,
Because
right.
you are filled with it already. So it's like one of those things that your self concept was just so on point, um that it draws people in. But I know there has been some coaches that say maybe your self concept is so on point, but let's say you still have problems with relationships. Like it won't fix the problem until you change those limiting beliefs about relationships. So I'm not sure what you think about that as well.
Right. So, I mean, with self concept, like, I agree with you in the sense that it is definitely important. Um, do we need to focus on it to manifest our desires per se? I don't think so. And
Mm-hmm.
here's why: because in some areas, our self concept is already good, like,
Yeah.
automatically, that we don't really have to work on it, you know, in order to kind of manifest something. And if that's the case, then, like, you can just go ahead and just proceed with whatever you want, and you will
Mm-hmm.
manifest it with ease, right? um
Yeah.
and that's the way I see it. Like, that's what I kind of cover in my self concept course as well, my master class as well. But essentially, like, I spoke about it in the sense that, like, okay, it is important, but in some areas it's already good enough, like, so you don't really have to work on it per se. I mean,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I mean, with SP, I guess you kind of have to work on it, because when people are starting out with love, love is a very broad topic, right? Like, again, like, whatever happened to you since like childhood could affect it, so you kind of have to work on your self
Yeah.
concept, probably,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I think, like, you may have to work on it depending on the area. um but again, and the other thing is that, like, I feel like you do have different self concepts for different areas of your life.
Yeah. I
So
love
I'm
that you put it that way.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
what about the people that struggle with like body image and like maybe they don't accept themselves because they're not pretty enough or they feel like they're not perfect in a certain area? Like I'm sure you agree like okay, that's more self-concept they should be working on.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's something that, like, I at one point kind of used to struggle with. I used to have a lot of inferiority complex when I was a teenager and things like that, with my skin color and whatnot. But again, like, I think the way I would see it is, like, I would kind of compartmentalize it, like, and see it as a separate issue. and work on
Mhm.
it separately rather than like tying it to my desires. Like I don't see it,
Yeah.
like personally for me, like I don't use that as a
Like,
prerequisite or like
mhm.
condition it, like okay, I have to get past this hump slash hurdle before I get my desires. Like that's not what I do to myself, because if I
I
do
like that you put
that,
it that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
like because if I do that, then that means until I get this stuff resolved, I'm never going to get that.
I love that you put it that way. It's almost like there's no excuses of like why you can't be in a committed relationship for someone to think, "Oh, I need to lose weight in order to feel
Oh
confident
yeah,
enough to,"
yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah. Those are
it's
rules
like you
that you're putting on yourself. Yeah.
exactly, and it's like you should know that you are already perfect in God's eyes as it is. You know, it's just something small that you should work on, but don't think that, oh, because you don't look a certain way, you don't have certain amount of money, doesn't mean it's not like you can't get something else that you desire. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. Like I always say, like, okay, yes, you are perfect, the way you are, but and people, I guess, always come up with like things like, well, if I'm perfect, then why should I work on myself or something? There's always room for improvement, right?
Yeah.
There's always room to grow and evolve as a person, and reach your fullest potentials, and that evolves as you grow and things like that. So, like, but you don't have to tie anything to like your desires per se, unless
Mm,
you want to, right?
yeah.
Then the same thing like with body images and something like, I mean, work on it, like, but don't tie it to SP or something, because
Right.
you're just making it
Uh-huh.
harder for yourself than it must be, I guess.
That is so true because most people do tie that around to like why they can't have the thing that they want, why they can't have the person that they want, and it's almost like false alarm. Like it's not even the truth. I love that you put it that way. That's something very new. Like, you know, like
Mm.
you should never have to tie anything to the desire because of one little thing that you are wanting to work on with the self concept. Like you can
Oh yeah.
still have that very thing. Like just because like you're always sad all the time, I'm just gonna say it, doesn't mean it ties down to you can't have that specific person. Like you can
Oh
have
yeah.
your
You
specific
can, you
person and
can,
still
you
be a
can.
sad person. Like but yeah, I love how like you explained that so well because I think that's gonna help open people's eyes to understand like, oh okay, like
Mm.
I don't have to be 1,000% perfect and still get what I want.
Oh yeah, 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 100%. Because the times when I manifested a lot of those things that I wanted, like I was nowhere near where I wanted to be, but I still
Mm,
managed to manifest all of those things because I didn't let those things limit me, if that makes sense.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like an aha moment for me when it kind of just clicked. I was like, okay, well, it kind of shows like how many limiting beliefs we are putting on ourselves on a daily basis at times.
Yeah.
And I think like it's also kind of looking at it from the 3D perspective. Well, I have to get XYZ before I get whatever I want. Not necessarily. You can just go, and get whatever you want, without any prerequisites or whatsoever. Like
Mm.
you can manifest whatever you want, and if you want it, like, without any conditions.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It just
yeah.
really depends on where your assumptions are coming from because it's just like you said, you don't want to keep limiting like
Mhm.
something and then grow it to a bigger one and then a bigger one. And it's like, okay, you're just keeping the limitations all there for you and it's you shouldn't have to do it like in that way.
Oh
Just
yeah,
keep it
yeah.
simple and easy, you know. That way you don't have so much to work on, you know, just so you can manifest something, you know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, I agree. And like coming back to what you said earlier as well, like, you were talking about like, limiting beliefs, not necessarily with self concept, but like just like other aspects of their desires, and how that could also come into play. Like you can have your self concept may be on point, but you can have other limiting beliefs that could be also be holding you know their
Yeah.
desires from coming to them, right? And I agree
Mm-hmm.
with that absolutely, because like I always talk about the four things that people should always be aware of when it comes to manifesting their SP. And it's like how you see yourself, how you see your SP, how you see your relationship, how you think they view you, and things like that. Like
Yeah.
it's not just your self concept, because you can think like, well, everybody loves me but except this person, for example. Or
Right.
you can say like, well, I am like a goddess or things like that, but this guy is being a jerk with me. Well, you have to change that if you want to be in a relationship with that person. um
Yeah.
and that applies to all areas of your life. Like, people are like,
Mhm.
well, I don't get it, well, my self concept is good, but it's just an aspect of it. It's not going to guarantee your success, because at the end of the day, it's much more than that. Like, self concept is w- one piece of a bigger puzzle, I would say. Yeah, so that's my view on it. Like, yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah.
circle back to that because you asked that question. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because it makes a lot of sense, like your self-concept may be on point, but if your stories are still not aligned to the match of what you want, then it's almost like, okay, that's something that you need to like improve of, work on, especially coming down to like a
Mm.
specific person. I think people kind of have a off balance with between the two, to the two things, with themselves and a specific person, because they may not have had a good experience with past relationships, so it kind of carries on to like this specific person. So, I mean, it still applies with everything else. Only it's with a specific person. So it's like, okay, if you really want to
Mm.
be with a specific person, you're gonna have to work on the assumptions you have about them right now, because they keep reflecting back to those assumptions anyways. And it's
Right,
not like
right.
it's not like they're here to hurt you. It's just your
Mm.
assumptions, that are kind of backfiring on them. And then
Right.
once you see more evidence of it, you're just like, oh, look, they're here to hurt me. Like, you see, I'm right. But it's like, no, like, if only you knew the truth that there is a version of them that wants to love you, that wants to give you everything that you desire. It's just maybe hard for them to
Mm.
see that. You know what I mean? Because maybe they haven't
Right,
got the chance
right.
to experience it, or they haven't seen the evidence of it. But once you kind of just, I guess, detach from that and learn to kind of see them in a different light, and just be really committed to that version of them, from there on, and then with themselves, eventually, like, they will have to show up that way, because I've seen it in my reality too, where I kind of like moved on from the SP, and yet the intentions had set a long time ago or some time ago, and they always come back, and they were
They
exactly
always
the
do. Yeah.
intentions. Yeah, they always do. um and then they had like conform exactly my intentions from there. So it's like I
Mm.
already gave them enough space, and they ended up conforming. And then the evidence started to show up, and I was just like amazed. It doesn't have to take years for them to come back. It just really depends.
Doesn't have to.
Um,
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's the last thing it has to happen. But I think like what we are talking about then is detachment.
right. Law of
But
detachment.
yeah, 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 yeah. But how does one go about it, in your
With law of
opinion? At least, yeah.
detachment.
Yeah, like
Ooh,
just detachment in general. Like, because if I kind of just leave something to be and then it comes into my life, like, yes, like conceptually it's like pretty straightforward, right? But especially with SP, I guess, like, folks do find it difficult to kind of apply it. So how would you, like, advise people to go about it?
okay. Well, for me with the old SPs, I just kind of like moved on with my life, and I was able to detach because
Mm.
I guess I wasn't fighting it anymore. I kind of stopped
Right.
becoming obsessive over like this one person. Because I was like, you know what? I already did what I need to do. Like, there's not much more work that I should be doing, you know? So I was like, let me just try to let go. Um, and I would even
Right,
affirm it
right,
just
right.
because I didn't want to feel so attached to it anymore. I would say, you know what? It's easy for me to detach from this person and like just move on with my life. You don't have to move on from the specific person. It may feel like that because maybe you kind of just accept it for what it is and just let it go with or without the specific person. And you were able to just kind of detach. Detach to me is just my emotions. Like once my emotions are detached from the outcome, it just becomes a lot more easier. I'm
Right.
able to just really put the energy and
How do
focus
you
back onto
detach your
myself.
emotions then? Like, how would you
Um,
go about the process? Yeah.
I honestly, if I couldn't at the moment, I will literally intend it to happen. Like the
Right. So you set the
affirmations
intention.
just
Okay. Okay.
I would intend it, right, exactly. And I've done this whenever, let's say I really wanted to move on from a SP and I was just like, he's just really stuck in my head. Like, I don't know how else to get rid of him. Like, this was my decision. I wanted to move on from an old SP like years ago, and I was like, okay, he really isn't leaving my head. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to tell my mind exactly what to do. And affirmations really helped
Right.
me with this. I was like, you know what? I never think about this person, like they don't exist in my reality. Like
Mm.
I created like the disappearance of them basically. And then I started to
Mm.
notice I wasn't really thinking about them anymore. And then if they did appear, let's say out of the blue, I repeat the same thing. And then I started to notice that they no longer appear in my mind. Like it can be really that easy. Like you can tell your mind to erase a memory or a person or something. And because your mind works like a computer, almost like it
Right.
files like,
Right.
documents. So I was like, I want to delete this one specific document about a person. And it just deletes it completely just by me affirming the attention of it. And same thing works with the detachment.
Mm.
That's how it worked for me. I don't know, it may work for other people, but I wanted to see what would happen because I was so fed up with being so attached to the thing or the outcome. I was like,
Right.
well,
Right. Right.
let me just attend it. And it worked. And funny enough, they come back. And it was my
Right.
decision if I wanted like have, go with it or not. But
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I just think that helps me kind of master detachment. That's how I did it. It was just my experience. So I think everybody does it differently in their own way.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely. I feel like everyone has their own way, but I just wanted to see like how was your process like, and just because um again, like it can help anyone, it can be of relevance to anyone. So I just wanted to like
Right.
kind of get your input on it. I like what you said, like setting the intention, and also like literally telling your mind to like just kind of delete that memory and just
Right.
instructing your mind. Yeah, because I think like people like the you are like you can literally do a lot of things with your body, and like you can literally instruct your mind to definitely remove memories for sure. There's a lot of things you can
Mhm.
do, but
Mhm.
if you can do a lot of those things, you can do this as well, like because I've heard like like monks and everyone like kind of instructing their bodies to shut off certain organs, um like and they just kind of like leave the world and whatnot. Like I don't know if you have ever heard of the autobiography of a yogi. uh like the author of
No.
that, like I don't know how to pronounce his name, but basically like he when he knew it was his time to kind of depart the world and everything, he literally instructed like his heart to stop pumping, like literally he just
Oh.
stopped pumping his heart, and he just kind of just left this world. And I often think about that, like to have such a command over your body.
Mhm.
I always think like it starts with the mind, and
Mhm.
yeah. So like what you said about
Yeah.
like just deleting those memories and instructing your mind, so to speak, like this kind of brought that into like my mind for some reason, because I feel like it's all in the same realm, but in extreme cases, of course. But yeah, like and I definitely have like experiences where like I kind of remove memories as well. So I definitely agree with you
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
aspect. Yeah, yeah.
Right. It was so like I didn't know it was going to work at the time whenever I was trying to I guess get rid of this person
Right.
out of my
Yeah, because
head.
you had to
I was just
experiment for sure. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
I was just super mad and I was on the drive back home from work at the time and I was like screaming like I never want to think about this person ever again. Like get them out of my head. And
Right, right,
somehow
right.
that affirmation just worked. It was almost like it just came to me so natural, but I was just so fed up with it. Like but it worked. And I mean, you really are telling the subconscious mind exactly what to do, and it's just going to follow up exactly the very instructions you give it. So like you said, you just learn from your own experience
Oh
from
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The subconscious mind is like it only follows our instructions that the conscious mind gives anyway.
Mhm.
um and I like also what you earlier, like you kind of, I think we kind of brushed it over, but like you were saying, like how we are constantly manifesting, like it's
Yeah,
it's always
absolutely.
there. And I always tell people, like, the mind is always absorbing and kind of like pushing things out without any bias. So if you're experiencing something unfavorable, well, you know it's just the way the system works. Like, so that means that you have been thinking unfavorable thoughts. So
Mhm.
so think, make it a point to think favorably. Then, like, look at your life right now, see what's the issue, change that, and
Yeah.
like think
Yeah.
favorably, and you should be fine. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the best way for me to kind of work on, if it's a story that doesn't seem to want to let me, just to let go, it could be just a
Right.
belief, right? I would just say, you know what, let me just confront it. As painful as it is, I don't want to deal with this later on. Like, I would just kind of, I like to write the story down. I would get so raw and so serious with myself, kind of writing a letter, like from to the old
Mm.
story that I don't want. So I'll
Right,
get really
right, right.
specific, like, okay, these are my thoughts, these are my emotions, this
That's
is like
good.
the story.
Yeah.
Right. I get really raw and serious. So I'll write everything down, every specific detail, and then once I finally release it off, into the piece of paper, it's like, okay, now I read the opposition of what I had been repeating inside my head. And it feels
Right.
really good because it starts to shift you in a different way.
It does,
And
it does, it does. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know if you do the same thing, but that's how I handle my limiting beliefs
Oh yeah, yeah,
if
yeah,
they
yeah,
don't
yeah.
go
I
away.
I always tell
Yeah.
my clients to do the same as well. It's like I would list things down, kind of just put things on paper, because I always tell folks that what it does is it kind of like, because when it's in your mind, it's really like a clutter, like it's very messy, you can't
Mm,
identify your thoughts. But as
yep.
you're putting things on paper, you're like, okay, so these are my thoughts. And even you may not realize that those things were in your mind,
Mhm.
you know
Yeah, and I'll,
until you actually kind
and
of put them
yeah,
on paper. Yeah.
absolutely. And take the time to like kind of talk with yourself in the private session, because everybody needs to really confront their own fears, confront their limiting beliefs.
They do,
Because
they
why
do.
would you want to keep sitting with it for the rest of the time,
Mm,
for the rest of the day? Because
right.
eventually it's gonna have to die away anyway. So to
Mm.
me, I just would rather deal with it now than having to deal with it forever. What feels like. So that's just what's helped me, and it's helped me
I think it's a
process.
very effective way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It helps tremendously, and this is something that I also taught my clients to do as well. And you know what, if you don't want to script, I kind of suggest them to, I guess, do it anyways, because how else are they going to kind of let go of the old story in some way?
I would
um
say, yeah, definitely reflecting does help, but like, introspecting and everything, journaling is one of those effective ways of doing it.
Absolutely.
I mean, even if you're not journaling every single day, especially for to identify your limiting beliefs and everything, it's just a one-off exercise anyway. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
again, it kind of boils down to how badly do you want to change,
that's so
and
true.
it's one of those things, because you can either be static where you are right now, or you can change. And change is never fully comfortable.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, yeah, so it's just one of those things as well. I kind of, like, with my clients, I always like kind of take a very easy approach, in the sense that, like, sometimes I might encourage them to write things down. But with the letters, for example, I always tell them, like, just write it once but read it every day. But with affirmations,
Mm,
I ask them to write it every day, simply because it's
yeah.
definitely easier to write your affirmations than to, like, write your
Yeah.
your letters every day. But like, if you are journaling, I think that's really effective as well. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, because that way your subconscious mind doesn't kind of wander off somewhere else,
Mm,
because the
mm,
moment you grab a pen and a paper and you start writing down, it's almost like, okay, the mind's really focused on one thing, because you can only focus on one thing at a time. So if you
mm,
can't get your mind to just focus,
mm,
to me, I think maybe breath work can work for you if you want to do that, if you're going into a meditation, or
Right.
or you're going into scripting. So it just really
Absolutely.
depends where you were with the mind and the emotions of it. So
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
mhm.
all of these things are like definitely valid, and I like how you mentioned breath work and meditation, and I think like like with breath work and meditation, it might not be like in the realm of like 100% like manifesting per se, but it definitely
Mhm.
helps you to kind of have a clear mind and
Mhm.
to think clearly and
Yeah.
to yeah because the more you are kind of like like just kind of dwelling in this headspace of like thinking about this desires and like limiting beliefs, you have to break the cycle somewhere, and like breath
Yeah.
work, meditation, or like exercising, some sort of a physical work and everything, like it really helps to kind of break that cycle. So I'm
Mhm.
glad you kind of mentioned that, because these things may not be in the realm of like manifestation per se, but it definitely helps your mind a lot. It's definitely healthy for your mind.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I totally agree. To definitely break those cycles off too, because you
Hmm.
want to be able to get your mind trained into the right perspective way. Like
Mm,
you want it to become kind of like more natural and easier.
right,
So so once you break the patterns, you're able to access more growth with the subconscious mind, because it's almost like you're exercising it anyways. Because
right.
it's just because you have neurons inside your mind. I think I read one time that we carry like 83 billion neurons in our minds. So you can only imagine all of the rewiring you're doing to get the limitation beliefs,
Oh,
to
yeah,
turn.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like, okay, it feels like a lot of work, but it takes baby steps to grow a bigger
Mm,
result. So it's just
mm.
one step at a time. You don't have to see like the whole staircase, just take one step at a time, and
I
eventually
like
you'll
that.
see like a
Yeah,
better
yeah.
view. Yeah, so that's how I see it, one stepping stone at a time, and eventually the progress
Mm.
is all it matters with you. Just kind of congratulate yourselves for the process that you have come you
Oh,
know
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think
yeah.
that's great. Like, I think everything that you mentioned thus far, I think it will be very useful for like whoever's listening to this. Again, like I think you brought a lot of like fresh perspectives about the routines and how, even if you're not consistent, like as long as like, because I think I really like what you said about you always have your subconscious mind with you, like you
Mhm.
always carry that around with you, and I really like
Mhm.
that.
Thank
As long
you.
as you're doing something to kind of keep your mind in the end space, I guess it's fine. Like that's the approach you took, which was really interesting. And yeah, you just mentioned a lot of things that I feel like folks can really benefit from. So yeah, I really thank you for your time, and yeah, like I think we can wrap it up because it's been a while right now. So is there anything you want to like say, any last concluding statements or anything like that? Yeah.
um, to anyone who's listening to this podcast, I hope you find some clarity, through our message. And, if you're on your own manifestation journey, like you're not alone. There's going to be its ups and downs when it comes to understanding, like, how to master down detachment, how to understand living the end. Like, do what resonates with you if you're going to apply any, like, manifestation techniques. And know that your subconscious mind, yes, is always with you. So really train it properly. And if you have a limiting belief, really get raw and serious and work with it so you can break the cycle, and start creating a really wonderful life for yourself and everything else around it. And I hope that the podcast helped you a lot and it inspired you from it.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that was a great message. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, how can folks reach out to you if they like want to see more of your content, if they want to see
Hmm.
you, like where can they reach you right now?
You guys can find me on my Instagram, my TikTok, and YouTube. It's my first and last name, Inez Gracia.
I'll link
I'm
those in the
sure.
description. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 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 definitely. So you can find me through that. And I'm happy to see you guys, you know, sometime in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely have you back on the podcast soon. Because I
Love it.
really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. This was so much fun.
Yeah. So what's next for you in your life? Like, what's next in your journey?
In my journey.
Yeah.
Definitely want to get an apartment.
Right.
Definitely more
Right.
success. Like I
Awesome.
think more self concept. more more man, I feel like there's so much more that I want.
Mm,
But
mm,
definitely working on those in the meantime. And we did talk about like the priority of things that I'm
mm, 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 mm.
manifesting. So
Right. Right.
definitely that, and also just being able to inspire other people that they too are the creator of their own realities as well.
Awesome. Awesome. I wish you the best of luck, and I intend the best for you as always. And yeah, thank
Thank
you so much.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You're
really appreciate
welcome.
it. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. I think like I mean we have been friends for a while now. I think
Mhm.
it's been years at this point. But to have you on the podcast and everything, and to set everything up so quickly, like yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah. So, guys, we have come to the end of the podcast. If this podcast resonated with you, be sure to drop a like and a comment down below. Turn on your bell notification so that you guys will know when we upload a new video every single week. There are more podcast episodes that are coming out. And if you guys have any questions or anything, any related comments to add on to this, feel free to put it down in the comments, and I'll definitely add Inez's, links to her TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram account in the description below so that you guys can reach out to her if you want to. So, guys, stay safe and happy manifesting. Peace.